this schedule really shapes up for a playoff run with a 12-team playoff.
Areas that, you need to get from experience, which is just, hey, I need to make quicker decisions.
How do you define success for this team?
National championship.
What's up, y'all? This is Bud Elliott of Cover 3 College Football Podcast. This is summer school, so we're talking Oregon Ducks today. That's my man, Matt, of Duck Territory, the source for all your Oregon content. Matt, welcome back, man.
Hey, how's it going? It's good to be back, man. It's I like summertime. It's a good time.
It is. Get a little golf in, get a little awesome predictions from you last year. You thought they had the chance to maybe run the table, and they did. Things worked out quite well for the Ducks in their maiden voyage in the Big Ten. What's kind of the vibe around the program, both inside the program and then also from the fans?
Well, I think internally there's a lot of confidence that Dan Lanning and his coaching staff have continued to develop the talent that they are acquiring, whether it's through the traditional high school means or the new school of going into the portal. They had the most draft picks in program history this past week with 10 guys going in the NFL draft. That's the most by 2 picks. 8 was the previous high. Dan Lanning's, ever since he stepped foot, has sent a bunch of dudes to the league. And I think what's been pretty impressive is it's high school guys, like a Josh Connerly going, a Jordan James going, guys that were part of the first class that he signed into the draft. And then it's taking players from the portal. And you can argue, Derek Harmon was probably an NFL draft pick prior to landing at Oregon. He's improved his draft stock. You look at a guy like Tez Johnson, who was a nobody in the public eye of the casual college football fan, and he got drafted after 2 years of stellar play at Oregon. So I think it's the development standpoint and the idea that when Dan Lanning sat down with Oregon Athletic Director Rob Mullins ahead of the 2022 offseason, and sitting there thinking, what can you do? Why should we hire you away from Georgia? Can you come here and can you emulate a plan? And he mapped things out, and that plan, that idea of what Oregon football could become is becoming true. They're loaded along the defensive line. Their defense is extremely fast. They're now starting to produce NFL draft picks. They're winning a bunch of games. And as evident to the Big Ten run of going 13-0, they can play a physical brand of football. They can come in and play that 3 yard in a cloud of dust. Hey, you've got to be able to run the football effectively. You've got to be able to stop the football effectively. They lived up to that billing, and now they're recruiting at a high level. Things are really, really good. And I think this is a year in which all the high school recruiting and the success there, Dan Lanning's really leaning into that to carry this version of the Oregon football program to another successful season.
So let's start here with the offense. There's a lot of new pieces here. Will Stein is not a new piece. The offensive coordinator returns. Quarterback Dante Moore is he's the guy, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably.
Okay. All right.
I think when I watched the spring game and then went back and rewatched it, Dante Moore, he didn't do anything to say he shouldn't be the odds-on favorite, the most likely candidate to win the job. He looked good. I always kind of take defensive standout performances with a grain of salt in spring games, and I always take offensive team performances or air quote struggles with a grain of salt, because you've got matchups that just will never happen. A left tackle that's your 10th guy that's going to play 6 games, 5 games all season long, right, matching up against the backup edge rusher that's going to play in every 14 game regular season game that you play. So naturally that backup's going to win, and that happened. But for Dante Moore, I think he showed a lot. I think he showed improvement, better command. He's going to be the odds-on favorite to win the job. But I walked away saying Austin Novosad and Luke Moga in particular have gotten better significantly. And they are capable of, in my opinion, leading this team. And Oregon could win 9 or 10 regular season games with either of those guys at the helm. Now, to get to the 12-0 discussion point, or to get to the clear cut, hey, you didn't win the league, but you're 100% in the playoffs discussion. I think Dante Moore is going to be the guy that elevates them to that level. But I think Oregon's quarterback room is a lot better than I anticipated it being going into spring football. But Dante Moore is expected to be out externally the starting quarterback in 2025.
Of all of the other guys who they lost on offense, who are you most confident that they're going to be able to replace without a drop off, or maybe even improve on?
Jordan James. And that's no slight to him at all. I mean, he got drafted. I think he landed in an unbelievably good spot with the 49ers. But Mekhi Hughes is a different breed of a player. I didn't realize how big he is. And sometimes you don't. This is the thing about football players, is you don't realize just how massive some of these dudes are because they've got shoulder pads on. And you're watching typically on TV and you're far away, but Mekhi Hughes, like, I wish I could show you the photo of it. He sat down for a press conference and it was like, this dude looks like an athletic defensive end. His shoulders are longer than the sideline. It's unbelievable. I think he's going to step in, and well, it's not to say Jordan James didn't perform well, because he did. I just think that's a position that you can plug and play. I think Mekhi Hughes is every bit as good, if not better, than Jordan James. And that says a lot, because that's a guy that got drafted. Excuse me, my cat just jumped up there. I think Mekhi Hughes is going to be a dude. And Noah Whittington's back. There's a redshirt freshman, Dink Riggs is his name. Keep an eye on him, because last season you talked to every departed defensive player, and there was a ton that got picked in the NFL. You asked them, hey, who was the guy in scout team that just made life hard? He was always the guy they mentioned. So I think there's an opportunity there for the redshirt freshman to step into some kind of role and be a player. So I think running back is the spot where, love you, Jordan James. You did a ton for us. We're going to miss you a bunch, but your production, like, we're good. We've figured out how to replace it.
I wonder if Chris Hampton, I know he wasn't there at Tulane when Hughes played at Tulane, but he might have been there when they were recruiting him.
Yes. Okay. He's also the older brother of Naeem Offord. Different last name.
Okay.
But he is the older brother of true freshman, former 5-star Naeem Offord. And I asked him straight up in spring practice, like, hey, like, it was the first time ever talking to him. It's like, hey, like, obviously your brother was committed to Ohio State. He flipped to Oregon. Like, were you involved in that process? Were you observing it from afar? How much did that impact you coming here? And he said, well, I was always going to go into the portal. I was always going to go and look out what was best for me. But I can't, I'd be lying to say, like, wherever Naeem went or wherever I went, the other was going to follow, or we were really going to try and push that to follow. So I think Naeem Offord being at Oregon, flipping in December, signing with Oregon in December, I think that really kind of put Oregon in a position of strength there in the recruitment process for him when he entered the portal in late December.
At receiver, so Tez Johnson and Trayshawn Holden are off to the NFL. Can this work if Evan Stewart doesn't take the leap? Like if he's just the same guy he was last year, who around him has to step up for this not to be a major drop-off at receiver?
Well, you hate to do this, especially because it's hardly ever happened at Oregon under Lanning. But there's a freshman, Decorian Moore, that he is okay. I don't say this lightly. There are guys, every program has them. At Oregon, there was a guy named Marcus Mariota that when he showed up as a true freshman and he redshirted all season in 2010, the talk was, or 2011 was the talk of the freshman and not the junior all conference quarterback Darren Thomas, who declared quickly after the season because he quickly knew, oh, that guy's really good. He's probably going to take my spot. And this is a guy that won the Rose Bowl. DeAnthony Thomas, he showed up, and day one, everyone was like, Oh, yeah. We've got the best running back in the country in LaMichael James and probably another top 10 back in Kenyon Barner, two guys that made it and stuck in the NFL. But this guy is as good and is going to have to play, even though we have those two dudes on the team. That's kind of the vibe we're getting with DeCorian Moore. Ultimate playmaker, every single peer player, whether it's a defensive prospect or a fellow offensive guy, a skill guy, has just gushed about his playmaking ability. Coaches have said, like, hey, it's all about just can he pick up the playbook? Can he process things quick enough? Because a physical skill set standpoint, he's there already to make plays. And I think what was notable in the spring game is the team that he was on. You look at the quarterbacks when they were in a position of, oh, I got to get the ball out quick. I got to find my safety valve. Every time it went to Corey Moore, every time. And as a true freshman, that's a pretty big accomplishment to already have kind of that reputation. So if Evan Stewart doesn't elevate himself and become the number one guy, and I think there's some questions there if he can do that, DeCorian's sitting there waiting in the wings. Now, I think they have recruited at an incredibly high level. They're going to lean on some redshirt freshman Jeremiah McClellan, a longtime Ohio State commit. I mean, that's notable. Look at that room that they have at Ohio State, and he chose to leave that and come to Oregon. He's expected to have a big year this season. They added a JUCO guy, or not a JUCO guy, a portal guy, Malik Benson from Florida State, and there's a big belief that he wasn't used correctly at the last two stops, or they didn't have the quarterback play to be able to get him the opportunities for him to be successful in his best positions. They feel like they have that here at Oregon. I think he's going to be a screen game, short game, or a deep threat guy. And then they've got a couple other freshman redshirt guys or some older vets that are going to step into some bigger roles. Justice Lowe is a junior now, and he kind of got into the starting role because of an injury last season and then never gave it back with Trayshawn Holden and Tez Johnson and just stuck in the group with them. Gary Bryant Jr. is also a senior, and he had a standout 2023 year behind Troy Franklin and Tez Johnson, who that season both had program-changing years in the reception category. Troy Franklin originally set the record, sat out the bowl game. Tez Johnson came in and behind him and beat him. So there's some Bryant missed almost all of last season with an injury. He's now healthy. So I think they've got some pieces, but DeCorian Moore is going to be the name. But I will say this too, like, he might not be the only true freshman that plays. Don't sleep on true freshman Cooper Perry out of Arizona. This is a guy that quietly is developing the same kind of reputation of, like, he's just shown up and he has to play.
I am curious about Benson, just because I was close to it last year, being an FSU guy. Like when they took him from Bama, I was like, this guy, the data on him says he sucks. Yeah. Like, and I'm not saying he does suck, but like the data was like, this is like one of the worst yards per route run in the entire SEC, but he is fast as hell. So we'll see if he can be a 1. And it was like, ooh, I mean, he ain't a 1. Like he was a distant 3 at Bama for a reason. Now, granted, that Bama room was pretty loaded, obviously. And he wasn't, but I'm curious if they use him in a more limited role. I could actually see that working. But like if he's a 3, kind of a gadget guy, like the defense has to respect him going deep some, and you throw some screens, like you said, that could work maybe. I mean, I'm interested.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be a top 3 guy on this room. I think if everything goes the way it should, you'll have Evan Stewart and probably Justice Lowe starting on the perimeter, and then Gary Bryant Jr. and DeCorian Moore will probably share the slot spot. And Gary's got the ability to bounce on the outside too and be a really good player. And so you're looking at that like, hey, this is the 4th, 5th guy on your roster. And I should also note, like, there is another 5-star on this team at this position, and Jurion Dickey. And
yeah, we're gonna ask, like, is he healthy?
He's healthy. And the staff has just, like, their messaging about him has been consistent throughout his time here. He's going to be a redshirt sophomore next season. He's only played in 4 games. He's played in 15 games. He played in 10. I didn't realize it was that much last season, but it was mostly in mop-up duty. He only had a handful of catches, but this is a guy that says all the right things. He likes being here. He publicly at least said he's not frustrated of the lack of production early on into his career. He's got apparently the right mindset on it, and he's the guy where if it clicks for him, he's different than anyone else on the roster. He's like 6'3", 6'2", and over 215 pounds. He's a huge looking dude, and if it clicks, he will move up the roster really quickly because he has all the physical attributes. And quite honestly, there isn't another guy on this team that fits his profile.
I love it. All right, offensive line wise, they do lose a decent bit here. Do we like the Nevada transfer? Or what are the odds that they can avoid like a real drop off here?
They love the Nevada transfer in Isaiah World. He was our number 2 portal guy in the rankings, I believe, for 24/7 Sports. I personally, though, like I've seen the early mocks for 2025 or 2026 NFL draft, and look, those are worthless right now to a degree.
Yeah.
But he's already being listed as like a top 10, top 15 draft pick. That feels very big jump. That feels like hey, we're projecting out pretty far here. But they love him. They think, League Terry was just the offensive line coach, just gushes about his addition, and he has the items for the game of football that you can't teach. He hit the genetic lottery. God blessed him well. He's 6'7". He's 340 pounds, and he's massive, and he can move. And Oregon loves his horizontal foot speed. They love his punch. They love his hands. They love how he can just destroy people. So they are all in on him at left tackle. They haven't ever come out there and said this, but this is just my reading of the room, is they think they have an all-conference caliber left tackle. And if you're going to win a conference championship, or if you're going to compete for a conference championship and you've got an all-conference tackle, that dude just naturally is going to be a day 3, day 2, day 1 draft pick, somewhere in that range type of range. So I think they love him there. They added another guy, that Alex Harkey from Texas State. He's going to start on the right side, and they're just as high on him as they are on World. Elite Terry talked about he's got the NFL traits too, and he's even bigger than Isaiah World. So there's 4 new starters along the offensive line this season. One of those spots will probably be filled by a returner that was on the roster last season. The other 3 are probably going to be filled by portal additions. It's going to be an offensive line that goes probably across the board, left to right, senior, junior, senior, and only one of those players is a third-year junior, or I guess that's the only way you could be a third-year guy. So they're old, they're talented, and then I think this is a one in which there's questions. Like, you look at it and say 4 new starters and a new quarterback, like that's hard. And there's going to be learning pains. And we saw that last year. Their offensive line was quite honestly bad the first 3 or 4 games as they adjusted and put guys into new positions. They figured it out. But I guess the way I'm going here is Alik Terry, he's an offensive line coach that's young. He's still under 30. But his 2 units that he's coached with so far at Oregon in 23 and 24 they're elite. They've been a top 5 O-line each of the past 2 years. One year they had a bunch of returners that he made better, and then the second year he replaced them all, and they continued to be elite. They were a finalist for the Joe Moore Award, and then now it's the third year, and you just have to look at it and say there's a lot of questions, but this guy's proven that he's a whisperer along the line. He'll have to get it figured out.
Love it. All right, let's hit a break. On the flip side, we'll come back, talk a little Ducks defense.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
All right, guys, we're back. Oregon defense time. So this unit, much like the offense, also loses a ton. Let's start positive first. Where are we most confident that they'll be able to either hold serve or maybe even improve upon where they were last year?
It's crazy, but defensive line, because they lose 2 draft picks. One of them is a first-round pick, Derek Harmon, up front. They lose actually 3. I'd forgotten about Jamari Caldwell. Three guys along the front all got picked. Jordan Birch, Derek Harmon in the first round, and Jamari Caldwell. They also lost Jeffrey Bossa to the NFL from a front 7 perspective. And yet the defense, you get the feeling from talking to their coaches, they think like, hey, this isn't a rebuild. This is a reload. We're just going to the names are going to change, but the production's not. And Amari Washington is the next in line. He's the dude to know that, like, hey, this is the next star interior defensive lineman that they've had. He's played as a reserve the last 2 seasons. He played in 8 games in 23, and then he played in every single game last year. He was really good. He was a bright spot in the Rose Bowl defensively, believe it or not. You could actually say that they did play some defense, or some players individually did play some defense in that game against Ohio State. But he's expected to be an NFL guy. Tony Tuioti, the defensive line coach, when he signed up and joined the team, was like, this dude's got all the NFL traits. We just have to just mold him and get him there, because he's going to have to like royally screw up not to. So he's the name to know there. Bear Alexander, a transfer from Georgia to USC to Oregon. They supposedly they sat him down in the recruiting process and it was like, we are going to coach you hard, and we think really highly of you, but we're not going to let things slide. And if you come here, you need to understand that you're going to get short reps. You're going to have to go maximum effort when you're out there, and you are going to get coached hard. And he signed up for that. He talked to a couple guys that he knows that know Oregon well, went through the process, felt like it was a good fit, signed up for it. And all intents and purposes through spring football, things have been good. And they've not, his reputation, what it was at USC, it has not come with him to Oregon. We'll see what happens in the games. But they're leaning on him in a big way to be a dude. And so far he's backed that up. And then on the edges, these are the returner spots. These are where Oregon feels really good. Mateo Uyunglele is back. Tatum Tuioti is back. They were able to redshirt Blake Purchase last season, which was just a huge move from a depth perspective, because Blake Purchase as a true freshman in 23 was just as good as Uyunglele or Tuioti, or 2 guys who are probably going to be off to the NFL after this season. They convinced Purchase to redshirt and stay. Colorado and Deion Sanders tried like heck to get him to transfer out there this season. And then after that, it's a bunch of young guys, whether it's on the edges or whether it's in the interior. They love this young group, and they've made it very clear we didn't hit the portal very hard for these positions because we've got a lot of confidence in the defensive line depth and the development that we have coming up through the ranks. Now, who are those? Who's Dan Lanning? Who's Tony Tuioti talking about? It's Tione Gray, redshirt freshman. It's Aiden Breland, the former 5-star. It's a redshirt freshman. It's Elijah Rushing on the edge, another 5-star that redshirted last season. Ashton Porter is a 4-star that on the edge that's also really good. Keep an eye on true freshman Matthew Johnson from De La Salle. As Tosh Lupoy would say, the defensive coordinator of the greatest high school program ever created. He played there. Matthew Johnson's going to be a dude, whether it's this season in limited snaps, very similar to how Mateo Uyunglele did 2 years ago, or maybe next year when a couple guys move off. But he's going to be a dude that can play on the edge or can play outside, very similar to Brandon Dorlus, who got drafted a couple years ago in the NFL, is currently there still.
I'm glad you said that, because a lot of my Oregon notes here are like, okay, Oregon has recruited extremely well in high school by the ratings. Who's going to be stepping up? And I think D-line makes a lot of sense. Receiver, as you know, with Takorian and maybe Dickey steps up. Let's talk a little secondary, Matt. Who do you see in the secondary stepping up, and which secondary spots we maybe have some more questions about?
Well, this is one where it's like, oh boy, every single starter is gone from last season. That's pretty notable. And that's going to lead to, we saw it last year with the offensive line where they didn't lose every starter, but that was kind of quasi because they had some guys that didn't play a ton that were in that group. But this DB room is full over roster change. Jalil Florence is slotted to start at one of the cornerback spots. Now, he has started 9 games. He started 9 of the 11 games he played in 2023. He didn't play in 3 of those games because of injury, and he didn't play at all in 2024 because of that injury that he suffered in 2023. He's now healthy. So the expectation is he's going to have one of those starter spots. So kind of get us a starter from 2 years ago back, and prior to that injury in 2023, when he was a sophomore, the expectation was 2024 would probably be his last year at Oregon. He'd be off to the NFL. 6'1", 6'2" cornerback, highly regarded recruit, was the first guy Dan Lanning called when he got the job at Oregon. He was literally fresh off the field, the national championship, and he FaceTimed him. It's like, hey, I know you're wavering on your commitment. You never met me before. Stick with me. That's the notable guy there. Dylan Thieneman from Purdue has joined the roster. He's going to be the leader. He's going to be the quarterback of the secondary. All intents and purposes, this is the dude. This is the next NFL first round, second round draft pick type player. He's just woed over his entire team. Everyone loves him. And then from there, they added a portal guy from Ole Miss, Theron Johnson. They've got a couple freshmen in the mix. Ife Obadegwu is a freshman that's going to be it's a redshirt freshman that's going to be in the mix. And then I talked about Naeem Alford earlier. Can he fight his way in? He's certainly going to be good enough to do that. They also have Brandon Finney, another guy that at one point was a 5-star in our rankings and just missed it at the final end. And they love him as well. They added a JUCO player, one of the best in the country, a year ago, and redshirted him, Sione Luau. He's going to play this season. So they've got a lot of – the way they explained it in spring football is they have a lot of talent. They have a lot of college experience as well. They just don't have a lot of experience at Oregon. And They're banking on the fact that these guys are going to be so good, things are going to transition in. Now, I think it's going to be that Penn State matchup in September on the road, probably going to be a night game, knowing who they have at receiver, knowing their quarterback's back. That's going to be a huge test. And I will not be the slightest if they go out there and they kind of look shell-shocked. But then it's, what do you do after that? Can you take the next steps to learn from your mistakes, or do you continue to make the same mistakes? I'm not sitting here and saying oh my gosh, they're doomed. They don't have any. They have NFL guys at multiple positions. It's just, is it going to click fast enough that it doesn't cost them a game, or maybe more than one game, to knock them out of really a good position in the playoff run?
Schedule-wise, the Penn State game is obviously pretty challenging. The next toughest game is probably at Washington or at Iowa, I guess?
I would probably say Iowa, and people could say, oh, it's an Oregon guy not giving any credit to Washington. But, dude, they don't have enough. They don't have a ton of talent. And watch the Oregon game against Washington the year before, and Oregon mopped them. they just straight up mopped them. And they could probably mop Iowa too, but new environment. That place is difficult to play as well. I think any casual college football fan would probably say Iowa historically is significantly better on defense than Washington is. And you have to take that into account. So I would probably say Iowa, but we're really splitting hairs here of, between the two. It'd be one of those two games. Rivalry game, end of the year, November in Seattle is awful. I'd never wish on that on anybody. Maybe weather comes into play there, but I would lean first to Iowa.
Love it. All right. How do you excuse me? How do you define success for this Oregon team in 25?
I would look at it and say if they went 10-2 in the regular season, I would look at that and still say that is a successful year. Now, if that means they don't make the playoffs at 10-2, I would think they would, on NFL talent, on brand, and playing in a good league, barring they don't have like just two embarrassingly bad losses. Like if you go to Penn State and you lose that game to Penn State, and let's say Washington beats you at home at the end of the year, like I don't think those are going to be losses that people say they shouldn't be a playoff team. Now they might be like the 11th team in that instance, but you would still have wins over USC, you'd still have a win over Wisconsin, you would have a win over Indiana as well that made the Big Ten, made the playoffs and should be, improved again next season. I think 10-2 would probably be viewed as a success. It probably would have a little bit of a sour taste to it. I also think, Bud, like 12-0 might happen again in the regular season. Like they don't play Ohio State, they don't play Michigan, they don't play Michigan State. How much of a push that's going to be, but I honestly think the schedule sets up where if Dante Moore is as good as we think he is, the back end on defense, connects maybe sooner than later,
right?
And they can maybe have the ball bounce their way a few times at Penn State and kind of sneak away with an early season win. 12-0 is also possible. So, I think they're a playoff team. I would be shocked if they reach the point of number one in the country in the middle of the season or late in the year. But I think everything's on the table. Like they've recruited as well as they've ever done at Oregon, and they have NFL players on both sides of the football. They have first-round draft picks on both sides of the football. This is as talented of a group as possible, and I think they hit the portal strategically well. Their history says that every guy that they add from the portal is a dude. There's nothing to think otherwise this season, and they've recruited and developed a bunch of talent. So 10-2 to 12-0 is a real possibility for this team.
Matt, really enjoyed it. Definitely going to check out all you guys do over at Duck Territory. See you soon, buddy. You going to Vegas?
I will be in Vegas. We will not leave Vegas as a conference ever again. I can tell you this right now.
Nice.
All roads leave Vegas, and once they put Media Day in Vegas, it will not leave after the current rotations that have been announced have gone through. And same thing with the conference championship game. Once the dates that have been announced already get played out, everything will go back to Vegas. Just watch.
Let's bring the sticks. I'll see you, buddy.